What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another solo leveling Arise video. First off, we are getting damn close to that 50k. I can honestly, every day I wake up, I look at my phone and I'm like, guys, what the fuck is going on? Like, I can't believe it's happening. So it's becoming a reality and it's kind of settling in finally. At first I was just shocked. Now it's just kind of like, yo, this is actually happening. And with that being said, I'm going to take a second and say thank you as usual. And I'm really glad that you guys are consuming all the content I'm putting out. It means a lot because obviously I'm putting my heart and soul into these things. I don't do any editing. It's all just raw. It's me personally. There's no script. I do all my testing first to make sure I give you guys the proper data, and then I just go in and be myself. And thank you guys so much for accepting who I am as a person. As quacky and as crazy I can be on live streams, it's an absolute blast, and I love it because I can just go on camera and not worry and not walk on eggshells. It's just great to be Payne. So thank you for that. So before we go any further, I just want to get that out there. Now, the purpose of the video, I want to talk about combat. I'm going to give you guys some special tips and tricks. I'm going to talk about everything you guys should be doing, and I'm going to give you guys some idea of how certain terminologies work. Now, one of the main things a lot of people have been asking me as brand new players is, what the hell is a core attack? Okay, so let me kind of go through a couple different scenarios with you guys and explain to you guys things you should be doing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do the hunters. Okay, we're going to do hunters for now, and I'll go back to Janus shortly. Now, as hunters, you have a couple different mechanics that you definitely want to use almost at all times. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set up my hunter team. Let me just do this quickly. Let's go ahead and put in Sao. Now, you guys can see here, this is called Twin Dragon Strike, is called a core attack. Now, what is a core attack? A lot of people have been asking, how do you build core attacks? So I'm going to explain this to you guys while I do this fight so you guys can see how this all works. Okay, so first off, I'm going to put the formation together here. Now, I'm going to put attack here because these two scale off attack with blades. She scales off of HP, so attack won't help her at all, but that's fine. This is more for purposes of teaching than it is anything else. All right, so I'm going to enter the battle here. Now, let's talk about core attack. How do you build up your core attack? What is it all about? All right. So first off, your core attack is going to be the section of your normal mode right here. You guys see where you might see this little normal attack? See how it's building up a bar, right? You guys can see here, it's slowly building up a bar. 6 attacks, create that icon right there. That is your core attack. Your core attack is a strong attack right there that is much more powerful than normal attack and gets built up by doing regular attacks like this up to 6 times. Regular basic attacks up to 6 times will activate your core attack. Okay, so you can see 4, 5, 6, and then here's my core attack. Okay, now you can also build core attack by doing skills. So watch this. I'll do a skill. Look at that. It builds 1.5 instead. Every skill builds 1.5 of your core attack bar. Okay, look at that. It took 4 skills to activate the core attack instead of 6 basic attacks. Now, that's important because your core attacks are going to do different things. So for example, for Saw, the core attack actually allows her to refresh her skills. Every unit's going to do something different. Another unit that's important, for example, is Silvermane Beck. His core attack activates bleed. So your core attack is very important to have activated almost at all times, not only because it's more powerful, but because it also does different effects, right? So another good thing is if you have the dragon set, that core attack builds even faster. It builds 1.5 times faster for the most part. It takes 4 basic attacks versus 6. Sorry, 0.75% faster, I guess. It takes 4 attacks instead of 6 to build it, or 3 skills instead of 4 to build the core attack. Okay, so it's much more prevalent and noticeable when you were in your dragon set, especially for those units that require core attacks. All right, that's one thing I want to talk about. Now, the second thing I want to talk about are QTEs. Now, what the heck is a QTE? That's a quick trigger event. That is when you can bring in your units at a certain time by doing specific commands, and I'm going to talk about those commands and how to bring them in. Now, a QTE in a skill set is always right over here. Okay, it's called, there it is, a QTE skill, and the conditions are as follows: do an extreme evasion, core attack, ultimate skill. But there's one thing they're actually missing from this entire list. I'm going to talk a little bit about that as well too. Okay, now let's go into an actual battle again and let's show you guys how QTEs work and what you want to do to activate them and why they're so important. And then we're going to talk about a couple other tips as well too that you can use. Now let's go into this battle here. We'll jump in with sure, let's just do this team again. So beauty of QTEs are as follows. Okay, you can do core attacks, which we just talked about, so you guys understand what those are. Now that'll actually activate a little trigger on the right side of the screen. You'll see it very shortly once we get enough damage into this boss. Alright. Oh, the camera angles are fantastic in this, by the way. So you guys can see I'm building up my core, right? It's when the moment I pop it, boom, there you go. there's a QTE. Now the beauty of QTEs, they do various things. You can see here I have decreased defense on burns and I have decreased defense on regular attacks. That's what Choi does, right? Now in order to get another QTE in, I can do the following. I can do a couple different skills and then activate that as well too, all right? Now it doesn't tell you the skills that actually activate it, but you can activate it. Now another thing to note as well too, while you're doing QTEs, your ultimates can also activate them. Obviously I don't have it, and you can hold off as long as you really need to in order to do so. Now remember, if you do bring somebody in, each time they will do their QTE skill and bring a certain buff or debuff or attack into it. Now in this case I did brand on the opponent, so you guys can see that now activates it, okay? Another way they don't actually talk to you about is if you summon your shadows. Look at that. QTE automatically activated, right? And now I can actually go ahead and use my QTE right away rather than waiting. So that is a great way to actually activate your QTE in a bind, especially if you need another unit to come in to do a certain buff or debuff. That's an easy way to activate it right there. All right, now a couple other things that QTEs do really well is iframe. If you don't know what an iframe is, that is essentially allowing you to bypass any maneuvers that the opponent does. So watch, see that right there, bypass that skill. I didn't get hit, and I can avoid that damage altogether by doing a QTE. So that's another beautiful thing about QTEs, is it allows you to survive a little more if you time them correctly. Watch here, I'll show you guys an example. I'm gonna break this for right there, okay? And now watch this ultimate one, right? We were talking about how ultimates can bring in QTEs. Well, there's my ultimate, and there is the QTE right there, right? Now I can bring in Choi, do his skills, and you guys will see a very similar setup here where he'll perform his ultimate. Won't actually break anything here because he's not a breaker, so we have to bring her into break. There it is, and then finish him off right there. Okay, now remember, QTEs do take up a little bit of time. I want to make sure you guys understand this. When you do Battlefield of Time, QTEs do not stop the timer from going because they're longer animations. Sometimes it's not worth bringing it in, but I just want to show you guys how all of those work. So we talked about QTEs and iframes. Iframes can also be done by doing ultimate skills, so you can avoid all damage altogether. The opponent will still do their moves on you, completely miss because you're doing your ultimate, so you can avoid damage, and also at the same time it does trigger a QTE. Alright guys, let's move on to the next topic. Alright guys, so next thing I want to talk about are debuffs. Now if you don't know, I already have a full debuff video which shows you guys what they all do, which ones stack, etc. Right now debuffs work a certain way. Usually you can perform them by doing skills or QTEs like this one right here. You guys can see he did a burn, 2 defense downs. The first defense down is a burn defense down, so burn mechanics hit him harder, and then the second one is actual defense down. Now I don't want to go through all the debuffs, but it is important, it's imperative as a matter of fact, that you bring in debuffers at all times, whether it's defense down, whether it's, you know what it is, damage up, whatever the case may be on opponents, or like for example Chaw's brand, which gives you guys more crit or crit damage. You always want to have at least one debuffer and one buffer on your team. Now for you guys who are wondering what each debuff does, if you go to my spreadsheet, which will be linked to the description of this video, I'm going to move myself right over here. There's right there, the last one I put in there is debuffs and how they work / stack. Make sure you go check that out. That will be on there for you. The full video goes through testing and show you guys all the results that I found, plus every single debuff explained and what exactly it does and how it does it. Okay, so I wanted to just bring that up real quick. It's nothing really crazy, but I did want to discuss that as well too. I think it's an important one to make sure that you guys see that and understand how the mechanics work. Now there's one other thing I want to talk about here. You see this one that says take damage less than 30 times in battle? Okay, so you can take damage over 30 times if you have a shield. Okay, so it's important to bring shielders. So Emma and Saw here are really good because they perform shields on themselves, and if you are looking to hit those achievements and trophies, especially on hard mode, because hard mode is around and is actually really hard to do because of all the crazy extra mechanics they add in there, bring a shielder like that, right? So I can take 30 hits of damage as long as my shield doesn't pop. That damage doesn't count. So that's a little tip for you guys for combat. When you see those mechanics, make sure you bring a shielder. It'll make your life that much easier. Now, a couple other things I want to point out. Certain artifacts will not work together. So for example, the destroyer artifact will not work together with other destroyer artifacts. They do not stack. So the power gauge increase only will work with one other, will only work on its own, sorry. Now skills on the other hand do not interfere with that. So if you have someone like Park Hee-jun who does increase overall ultimate power gauge, then you will actually be able to stack those skills together and use those at the same time. Now speaking of which, we all know there are stats that cap, for example crit on the stat sheet. Skills do not have a cap. So if you bring skills in such as crit damage, etc., they will not show in the stat sheet, but they will work in game by showing you the buffs right above your health bar. So keep that in mind. Another little tip for you, for those people who think switching hunters out and in take away your buffs. They do not. You have a limited amount of time, about 30 seconds if I recall, to use all of your buffs, and they will not disappear when you swap in and out. So keep that in mind. So for example, anybody who uses the beast set, if you're worried that you will lose the stacks, you will not lose the stacks. They will maintain. So don't worry about that aspect. They built it this way knowing for the fact that these hunters will go back and forth very often between swapping in and swapping out. So it's built that way for those buffs to maintain, or else it would render a lot of these artifacts useless, right? So keep that in mind when you're playing and building your units. All right, guys. Okay, so we discussed QTEs and bringing units in. Now I want to discuss something else that's going to help you guys through the Battlefield of Time, okay? So Battlefield of Time is going to require you to use as much of your finesse and tactics to get the fastest score as possible. Now here's the thing. Instead of using QTEs for most Battlefield of Time, you actually want to use just bringing units in. You guys can see here, you guys can bring a unit in quickly as possible while doing an animation. So for example, here, look, I'm doing this. Look, she'll finish the animation, but Choi's already in, and he can start his off. And same thing with Sao. You guys can see her. She came in here, or saw, whatever, however you want to call her. And so QTEs take a long time, but bringing in an opponent or bringing in a hunter at the same time is actually really, really smart, because it saves you guys a ton of effects that you have to go through normally, right? So let's just show you guys an example, right? I'll do another skill here, and I'll bring in Cha to do something else right away. So watch. You guys can see that. See, she's in here right away doing her skill. Sao is in right away doing her skill. So it's one of those things where you want to make sure that you're not spending too much time watching animations and ultimates. You guys can bring in double ultimates at the same time too. So if you're quick enough, you guys can bring in QTE quick enough. You just got to be really quick on the trigger. So never, ever finish a full animation if you want to bring in and do better at the time of the Battlefield of Times, okay? Because the longer you wait, the more time you spend doing these animations, the less the clock doesn't stop, right? That's the main thing to note. The clock never stops for you in these games, so it's important to make sure that while you're doing animations, you have the next one ready in your mind. And yes, it does take practice, guys. It's one of those things that you'll do so much better on leaderboards if you can get this down pat. And it's one of those things that are going to be imperative, because a lot of players are catching on to this, and now they're also learning that they can do this as well too. So make sure, guys, you get on board with this plan and start practicing all of your maneuvers to bring your units in quicker in order to get things done. All right, guys, that's it for this part of the Hunter session.